Welcome back to Mean Streets, where we investigate the best, worst, and forgotten movies of film noir and more. I'm Luke Deckard.
And I'm Matthew Booth.
And we are your cinematic sleuths, and it's time to crack another case. But before we do that, we decided to bring in another cinematic sleuth to help us on this one. We have Sergio Angelini joining us. Welcome, Sergio.
Welcome,
thank
Sergio.
You, Luke thank you, Luke and Matt. It's brilliant to be back.
This is a funny one because Sergio this is his second appearance, but in release order will actually end up being his first appearance on the podcast. But he is coming up again in a few more weeks' time for a fantastic film that I'm excited for everyone to listen to. But we have something else to talk about tonight. We've been slapped in the face with this investigation.
That's a neat way of putting it, Luke. That's a neat way of putting it. We've been slapped in the face by 2025.
We've been run over. We've been run over by a bunch of horses. We've been driven over.
Duck. Yes.
Yeah. A lot of CGI horses at that, I think. But today we're looking at 2025's Play Dirty, starring Mark Wahlberg, LaKeith Stanfield, and Rosa Salazar. Written by Shane Black, Charles Mondry, and Anthony Bagarozzi, and directed, of course, by Shane Black. The IMDb logline is: a ruthless thief and his expert crew stumble onto the heist of a lifetime.
Let's start with initial reactions. We'll do initial reactions, and then we'll unpack maybe some of the history of, Westlake and Parker a little bit before we dive into the actual film. But let's start with initial reactions. Sergio, as the guest, why don't you go first? What was your you powered up Amazon Prime, you hit play, you sat there for 2 whole hours, the film ended, and how did it leave you?
Well, I thought the ending was quite good. Actually, I was worried they wouldn't do the right ending, and they did. I thought the beginning was okay. I quite enjoyed it. I think it is.
That's just because there was a pair of titties.
No, that wasn't. Now, obviously, feel free to get Mrs. Luke onto the podcast, and you can explain that to her. But you kind of accept certain things when it comes to adapting the Parker books by Richard Stark. You kind of get used to the idea that there are kind of going to be problems. None of them have really tried to really do them, and this doesn't either. So on the one hand, I think as a fan of the books and of Richard Stark stroke Donald Westlake, it's disappointing. It's deliberately, clearly, specifically not based on a specific book. It takes elements from a variety of books, although not that many of them, but it tries to sort of pay homage in I think, a fair way up to a point. But it's a different kind of animal. And we'll get into this. So you asked me for my initial opinion. I guess my initial opinion was disappointment, because I feel that of the kind of trio of films that it seems to belong to within the Shane Black filmography, that is to say, Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Good Guys, and this is the third one of those. All three of them are sort of inspired by books that were published in the 50s and 60s and speak to that sort of era of pulp fiction, which is therefore slightly late era pulp fiction, in fact. But which were clearly the sort of books that Shane Black got into as a teenager, admittedly about 10 years later. I think that it feels weaker than those two. So I'm trying to compare like with like, as opposed to like with unlike. And I feel that on the one hand, it's got all these elements that are very Shane Black, and we'll get into those, I think. But up front, I must admit, it feels like the least of them. So I think it comes third out of those three. It has a lot of pleasurable stuff in it. I'm a fan. I like Shane Black. But it is not particularly brilliant. I think one of the things that'll be fun to discuss is the awareness when this was being made, that this was going to be on Prime. It was made for Amazon, funded by them. It wasn't made for cinema exhibition. And I do feel increasingly that one of the things that we as fans, consumers, but also to some extent commentators, have to take on board the conceptual shifts that filmmakers are probably having to genuinely make in targeting it at an audience that isn't going to be, shall we say, trapped in their seats for 2 and a bit hours, watching it in a very large venue, hopefully, with other audiences who are going to laugh, cry, scream with them. Instead, it's going to be 2-3 people at home. You can pause, stop, rewind whenever you like, check your phone, do other things, have a chat about it before it picks up again. And I do wonder to what extent they are having to really rethink how these kinds of films are made, because it feels like 3 films glued together. And to me, it's almost like, in a way, it's almost like you're meant to consume it with the idea that you're probably going to have gaps and you're not going to be watching it all in one go. But perhaps I'm being too kind. Over to you guys. I've blabbed on, but over to you guys.
No, I don't think you're being too kind at all. I think you've actually hit something on the head there with that, because that is a huge problem with streaming in general. I've seen screenwriters lament about this quite often, where they are being told that you need to write your episodes with the idea that this is someone who is making spaghetti. And this
while
is,
watching
while you know, it's on in the background, so therefore your characters need to be telling you everything that's happening because they might not be watching. So this is actually a genuine huge problem, and you can see it in if you just go back for the last 4 or 5 years of streaming shows, you can see the gradual decline of quality of storytelling as a result of these studio mandates who are being forced upon the creatives by uncreative studio heads, people like David Zaslav, people that's kind of the fight that I think creators have to deal with. And I think a lot of the times when you see some of these streaming shows and films, you can really quite easily pick up on these problems. I mean, a real simple quick tangent before I give my quick impression of Play Dirty, but a quick tangent on that would be the show Picard. If you watch the 3rd season of Picard, which I really enjoyed the 3rd season, not the first two, but the 3rd season is quite good. It's 10 episodes long, about an hour long each. Realistically, there's probably 2.5 hours worth of real story in there. There's a lot of padding. And it's a lot of padding because it's designed to, be that buffer for the audience. It's that sort of here's an hour worth of an episode with 5 minutes of plot at the beginning and 5 minutes of plot at the end. And if you miss the beginning, if you miss the middle, you're okay because bam, it's all there at the end. So yeah, but then other shows, you look at something like House of the Dragon or Game of Thrones or Slow Horses, and or The Studio, you don't get anything like this. Those are made for people who actually enjoy the art and entertainment of film and television and prestige entertainment. And I feel Play Dirty, to swing it back, I think Play Dirty sort of falls into the camp of this is for mouth breathing audiences. This isn't for Shane Black's fans. I'm a huge fan of Black. I like his early stuff where he's just writing, whether that's Lethal Weapon or whether he's writing, directing, whether that's Kiss Kiss or The Nice Guys. Those are excellent stuff. But then something happened around The Predator, and it's just been sort of lackluster, entries into his filmography sort of ever since then. And I think as I was watching this, I thought, man, this is like the worst movie the 90s forgot to make, because I know that like Parker's not had a really good adaptation ever. But this felt so misguided. It reminded me of the '90s Super Mario Brothers movie with Bob Hoskins and John Leguizamo, which is just an absurd, ridiculous, stupid take on Super Mario that just doesn't work by any stretch. And this sort of reminded me of that. This, like, what are you doing here? Like, this is like Indiana Jones meets Pirates of the Caribbean meets Ocean's 14 blended with, thrown into AI, and with a couple of Parker novels thrown in there, and they've hit blend, and this is sort of what AI has has produced, this sort of, as you say, 3 different sort of movies throughout the course of this one bit. So yeah, I was far more disappointed than I expected to be, and my sort of my hopes were very low going in, not because of Black or anything like that, but because of Mark Wahlberg. And this, from the trailers alone, had a very Spencer Confidential vibe to it. That was by far the worst Spencer adaptation in human history. So going into this, I thought, ugh, this just looks like that, but for Amazon. And then here we are. Matt.
Well, I agree. Broad brush, I agree. I just want to pick up on what the point Sergio was making, and to me, it's incredibly sad. That very idea is incredibly sad, because I'm one of those sad people who, when they put a film on, doesn't look at their mobile phone, and wants to be taken into the world and for 2 hours plus or minus be entertained and be part of that world, and to care about the people in that world. That sort of idea that that you can have a film where somewhere around some point within it, you can just give up and go off and do something else, to me is like alien. It's an alien concept. So I haven't watched it with that in mind, I have to say, because that's not something that's ever really sort of occurred to me, because it just wouldn't naturally occur to me. It would be, I'll sit down and watch this film and see what it does for me. But I accept that is probably the way things are going, and it's becoming increasingly noticeable. But my initial reaction to this when the credits rolled was, I turned to my wife and I said, well, that was noisy. That's what I think this film, I think it just seemed to be 2 hours of fights, gunfights, car chases, explosions, and very little else. I'm not an expert on the Parker novels, so I thought to myself, would this make me want to go and read one? And the real tragedy of that is, I don't think it would. This on its own, I don't think it would. So, like the pair of you, I was disappointed. Although I wasn't sure what I wanted to get out of it, but I knew that after 2 hours and 20 minutes or whatever it is, 2 hours and 10 minutes, I'd not got something that I was happy with.
I mean, I will say up front, I think that I think it's better than your average Mark Wahlberg movie. I think it's better than Spencer Confidential. Now, granted, that's a low bar. I agree. But so, all right, and and I'm not, going to compare it with, say, Transformers movies or things like that. But I do think that it has enough in it to sort of identify it as a Shane Black movie, which has some of those pleasures. I think what's peculiar and frustrating, particularly I think as fans of Shane Black, is this sense of it somehow getting lost in trying to, I don't know, you'd get a sense of, like you were saying, Luke, it's kind of, what's the audience for this? Who are you actually aiming this at? Because you seem to be doing something that's overtly comedic a lot of the time. Now, there's nothing actually, it's not that that's badly done. There are films that can toss that off, even in a kind of, pardon the pun, blackly comic way, and you can get away with it. And this one sort of gets away with it, but I think the issue is that you don't really care about anybody's fate very much. And you're supposed to care about at least one or two people. So, I mean, we'll get back to this. So, because I have good things to say about it, but I feel your pain, Matt. I mean, I think it's better than a lot of kind of dross that's out there. I don't think it belongs with real bottom of the barrel stuff at all. I think it's got enough good stuff in there. I think what is frustrating is that sense that you're having to sort of really dig for those nuggets, and you shouldn't kind of have to, because you imagine that Wahlberg, okay, you try and deal with that side of it. Some people think he's great after all, so okay, maybe they're not right, but there are films that he's been in where I think he's been quite good. Three Kings, very early, I know, but I happen to like that, and that's actually a genuinely edgy heist movie if you want to look at it in that way after all, and I really enjoy it. But there's this oddity about trying to stick to that very hard-boiled tradition that it's coming from, and which Black clearly valorizes, clearly loves, and this kind of comedy way, this kind of cartoony aspect of the film that makes it very hard to feel that it has any kind of presence or gravitas or any of its own sense of real story, because it starts to feel very generic, and that's a shame, I think.
And I agree with what you also said earlier, Sergio, about the sort of tiers of Shane Black films, and I would absolutely agree this is not a patch on The Nice Guys or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang or Lethal Weapon. And I had the sense, and maybe this is something we'll get into, and maybe again it's about the studio mandates that Luke mentioned. In Kiss Kiss Bang Bang and The Nice Guys and Lethal Weapon, the humor seems very organic. Here, I felt it seemed very forced, and I didn't find it particularly funny. Whereas I can laugh out loud at The Nice Guys and at Kiss Kiss Bang Bang. I didn't find this particularly funny. I found it a bit laboured.
I kept wondering. Yeah, Luke, I was going to say to you, do you not think that this should have been in period?
That would have, I think that would have been more fun, because that was one of the charms of The Nice Guys. This sort of, it's not dealing with modern tech. It's it's that worked really well for it. But I will say, just quickly to pick up on what you're saying there, Matt. I mean, that was also the problem that I had with The Predator. I was really excited for Shane Black, who acted in the original Predator film, to come and direct and add his Blackisms to the Predator franchise. I thought that was going to be really exciting. And then, you essentially get what you get in this movie, and that's none of this is funny. And I don't understand what I'm struggling to compute is I don't understand why. I don't understand how something like The Nice Guys is cracking from beginning to end, and everything is working, and then suddenly with these last couple of films, it's so off the mark. And I don't actually want to put the blame on Shane Black. I feel like this is coming from other places, possibly studio heads that don't know what they're doing, imposing certain things, possibly. But he's gonna have to take some blame, I guess. But there's a bit of a misfire. But no, Sergio, yeah, I think if this had been in period, it would have forced some restraint, because you say this is better than the Transformers movie. This was, to me, about as chaotic as a Mark Wahlberg Transformer. I mean, that train sequence, what the shit?
Yeah.
That's straight out of Transformers for me.
I was going to say it's straight out of The Taking of Pelham 1, 2, 3. And I think that's what was in his head, because when you get into that control room, it's kind of the 70s. And in my head, I get thinking, this is what he really wants to be doing. Because this thing, of course, and I don't know if we want to get into it, but of course, this has had an interesting development history. There's also rather a prolonged development history. And you suddenly think, what the hell? This took 3 years to come to the screen. And that's from when they were going, let alone the fact that he'd started writing it much earlier. And you sort of think, what the hell happened? Like you said, did it get Wahlbergerized, or did it just get Amazonized? Did it get streamified? Because also one of the things, and this is slightly better than that, but one of the things that I find very frustrating now about a lot of these actually rather expensive films that are being made for streamers is that they tend to look so bland. The visual aspect of it is quite important to me. Now, this one, which has one of the great cinematographers of cinema, Philippe Rousselot, who did The Good Guys, and I keep calling it The Good Guys. It's The Nice Guys.
Yeah, The Nice Guys.
Okay, and I had my birthday on Saturday, and I got given the huge brand new Blu-ray box set thing of it, and and I still get the title wrong, but I love the movie. Anyway, so I'm going to keep saying Good Guys. No, okay, it's The Nice Guys. So sorry, apologies up front. But I do think that it's, and he shot that as well, but he also shot, if I remember this correctly, Cyrano de Bergerac. This is a great DP, but this is an amazing guy. And you get a slight sense of him trying to go for different tones and things, particularly when he's shooting some of the night stuff and the snow stuff and things like that. So it gives it a different feel. But there's a very bland kind of digital look that you get with a lot of these movies that make it, and then you realize, but it cost $155 million. And I think, and you couldn't make it look more interesting. And the fact is, you get the impression they don't want it to, because it's got to all look nice and flat. And I'm just thinking, right?
This is something we've raised on many occasions, isn't it, Luke? Yeah. That they all look flat and fake.
It's the marvelization of cinema. It's what happened with the comic book movies. You get to the MCU comes into the picture, and then everything becomes flat, muted colors. It's easier for CGI to be slapped on top of this. There's nothing dynamic visually. It's just here's this flat, boring, muted palette, and they just throw that out there, and you just meant to accept it. Or you have these terrible green screen effects now that are just like, this is so, it's funny to me, because like I'll see these terrible green screens even in this film, and I'm like, I would much rather watch wobbly sets on 1960s Star Trek and not think twice about it and be pulled in totally into that story than watch this, because this just feels like, and I say this, I mean this type of thing generally, makes me feel like, well, you're just not even trying. Like you're intentionally like not trying. Why?
Yeah. There was something particularly poor about the CG in this film. I do wonder, and I think, and this is a personal observation, I happen to be in the country where it started shooting. Last March, I was in Sydney visiting my family in Australia. And the film was made predominantly there. It's got a little bit of shooting in New York, but really it's all in Sydney. So, of course, it's Sydney pretending to be the eastern seaboard of the United States. And I think, therefore, you've got certain oddities, and it starts to feel strange. You tend to have a number of actors who they've been imported, but all the extras are completely unfamiliar. And, it's that oddity, and you wonder how much does that affect the crew isn't American, the basic actors are, everybody else around you, it's a foreign country. It's like all this stuff that tends to be shot in Croatia or what have you, with kind of cheaper, less interesting stuff. So you kind of accept that because it all doesn't feel particularly good anyway. When something like this, which is much more expensive, but okay, presumably they shot in Sydney for financial reason. I remember when they were shooting there, and and this was in March last year, so this has taken 18 months to come out. And I think that, and at the time, it was in the papers and everything. I thought, oh, cool. They I love Parker. This is great. But while watching it, it has this oddly hermetic feel, because in actual fact, for so many of the locations, you feel they've been augmented or modified by CG, and it isn't very good. And that everything feels ever so slightly off. And I do think that sometimes the fact that the locations just aren't quite right, the physical properties, the cars don't look right, the houses don't look quite right. They're making an effort. It's like when the police cars turns up, when they're in the casino, right? And the police cars don't look right. They don't look like New York police cars, and maybe that's what New York police cars look like, but they don't look like them in other New York shot police movies.
Yeah.
And let's put it that way. And it's peculiar, and I think it throws the balance off. And what's frustrating is certainly it manages to make the equivalent shot in Die Another Day of someone doing a backflip into a body of water in the opening part of the film look good. Because here it's remarkably bad. Also, did you notice who did the opening titles? Let's talk about
I'm
some good
assuming
stuff.
someone who worked on James Bond.
Daniel Kleinman, who's been doing them all since the mid-90s. So he did the titles for it. For instance, I thought the titles were weird but interesting.
Yeah, we'll get to the titles. Let's say the titles. We'll get there.
Okay,
we'll get there shortly. Very shortly. Very, very, very shortly. We'll get there because I do want to talk about the titles specifically. I do.
Okay.
But no, you mentioned the production history, so I think that's actually a really good segue to just kind of touch upon some of that stuff, and then whatever factoids you guys got, throw them out. I guess for anyone who doesn't know or haven't been listening so far, yes, this film is based on a book series. The Parker novels started with The Hunter in 1962 and spawned 23 novels. I've not read them all. I'm not an aficionado, but I've read a number of them. I was picking up on a couple little things like, well, this seems like it's from The Hunter. This is from, what is it, The Black Ice or something like that. There was things that I was picking up on in this film that felt like, okay, this is where they're sort of pulling from. There have been, as we've mentioned, there's been a number of Parker adaptations. None of them have really hit the mark. The most recent one was I think 2013's Parker. With
the Taylor
Hackford.
Yeah.
They Mel Gibson had a Parker adaptation, though his name was Porter, and that was based on The Hunter. Then there was 1973's The Outfit, starring Robert Duvall. I don't know why these films changed the name Parker.
Earl Macklin. Yeah.
Yeah. Like why? Why do they do this? Why?
Well, there's a reason. I can give you the reason if you want.
Go on.
It's Donald Westlake. Donald Westlake, who wrote as Richard Stark and several other names. I particularly recommend the books he wrote as Tucker Coe. The Richard Stark books, he sold the rights to the books, but he wouldn't sell the rights to the character in the sense of the name. He insisted, so they were all changed. So, he's Walker in Point Blank. He's Macklin in Outfit. He's Porter in Payback. And it was, in fact, only after he died when his widow, basically, they made a deal and they wanted to adapt the book that was filmed as Parker, which is Flashfire, and which is one of the later Parker books. And that was the first one, but that was because he passed away.
Oh, interesting. Well,
simple as that. It was. He talks about it in one of the extras on the Payback DVD, in fact.
I need to listen to that then.
Which is a great movie, I believe. The theatrical, not the theatrical version necessarily, but I think the director's cut is by far the best attempt to get a Parker book on screen. I'm just going to get that out there.
When we cover it, you'll be back for that episode.
Oh, yes.
Matt, you mentioned the screenwriters earlier. There's Shane Black, Chuck Mondry, and Anthony Bagarozzi.
Bagarozzi. Yes.
My dyslexic brain is not going to work that one out. Now, interestingly enough, Mondry wrote the Roadhouse reboot or remake rather for Amazon, which I don't know if you have seen, but it is on par with this film. I think it is. I found it to be quite terrible, just very sloppy. It had weird, gross, like CGI fist fights.
Yeah.
Weird. It was just like, what is this? So I saw that and I was like, oh, well, that kind of makes sense to why some of this sucks and maybe why some of the action sucks a little bit. But then Anthony, he wrote The Nice Guys, but he also has a credit on Roadhouse, and then you've got Shane Black. So this is a very confusing one to me. This is where I'm like, I don't know where things fell apart. And I feel like this, maybe it's at a studio level. Because so MGM, Amazon MGM Studios, they brought on Robert Downey Jr.'s production company. And classically, Joel Silver was going to work on it as well, but he eventually eventually left the project. I'm not sure why he left. Do we know why
He got
left?
fired. He got fired.
Do we know why?
It's kind of one of those things where it is to do with Silver's sort of reputation. I think it led to a lawsuit.
Did it?
So it's one of those things people are being slightly quiet about it.
Okay.
It's not.
So what's the alleged story?
Oh, I don't do that sort of thing, and not for things that haven't been sorted yet legally, Luke.
You can Google it.
You can Google it, mate. Yeah.
And this is mean streets. These aren't the nice streets. These are the mean streets.
Yeah.
But yes, originally it was Downey's company, right? And he was going to star in it.
Yeah. How do we feel about that? Because he was also meant to star in the Perry Mason HBO adaptation, which went to someone else, probably a better actor. Not a better actor, but a more suited actor, I should say. But what do we think about Downey in this role?
Well, given how the film turns out, and it's overtly cartoonish and obviously comic leanings, I can see it. I have to say, I can see it. As I say, like you said, Luke, I'm not an aficionado on Parker the character, but Lee Marvin is my sort of go-to point for what Parker is. But in this film, I can sort of see Downey Jr. as girding to the camera and, self-indulgent humor being quite at home in this, to be honest. I'm not a Downey Jr. fan, but I think he's got more personality than Mark Wahlberg has on screen. Definitely in this. I think Wahlberg's just a bit of a blank slate to me.
He just always looks confused. He just
and I never think to myself, oh yeah, it's a Mark Wahlberg film, I'll watch it, or that was really good because it had Mark Wahlberg in it. I sort of go, oh yeah, Mark Wahlberg, I remember him.
Now,
yes, forgotten all about it. He's that sort of impression on me, totally sort of nothing really.
Sure.
And always looks confused. So,
when I first heard Downey was in it, I thought, oh, that's really bad casting. I'll be honest. I mean, in the sense that as someone who's coming to it from the books, unlike Matt, and sorry, I interrupted you there, Matt, but just to say, I mean, certainly from my point of view, I mean, let's put it this way. When Westlake was asked, and by the time he was asked, it was about 1970, he said that he thought it should be Jack Palance was physically how he imagined him. There's a big gap between Jack Palance circa 1970 and Robert Downey Jr. circa 2025. Not least, which is, Downey Jr. is sort of quite short. He's sort of roughly the same height as Wahlberg, I think. But physically, he doesn't have. But yeah, he's a much better actor than Wahlberg. So if it's a question of having one or the other, give me Downey Jr. any day of the week.
I mean, I don't say that he's a match for Westlake's character. I say that he's a match for this film, and because I saw that, I read that Palance was the author's choice, and I think even Palance in the 90s was more than Downey Jr. in 2025, to be quite honest. And when you think that Westlake wants Palance to play the character, you think, oh well, I've got a grip on, well, I've got certainly a basic idea of what that character is then, and neither of these two actors are that. Lee Marvin, I think he's probably close enough to what Jack Palance might have done with it, but for the context of this film and what this script is seems to be trying to do, Downey Jr.'s comic timing, if you want to call it that, I think would fit in very well with this. I think it'd be more entertaining than Wahlberg. What can I say?
I think so. I would have been much happier with Downey Jr. in this role. I wouldn't have been ecstatic about Downey Jr. in this, but at the same time, I would have been like, oh, well, at least he's not doing another effing Marvel movie. But I'm assuming him doing another effing Marvel movie is the reason he's not in this, because he's gone on to do Avengers Doomsday 1 and 2 and all that kind of stuff, so he's been roped back into the Disney machine. And I can only assume that's why he didn't stick with this because that's going to give him way more money, you know, for this. But yeah, it's an interesting one. I really don't understand Wahlberg's casting in this. Even just looking at Black's other films, I don't get why anyone said yes to Wahlberg for this. I don't. There are other people who can do, you know, smarmy comedy and you know that kind of stuff. I don't know why he was cast. I don't know who he knew or who he blew to get this job, but I just it's such a bizarre casting to me, and almost gives me the impression of, especially when you see the finished result, I just get the impression of a lot of people just maybe just didn't care, and they're just this is just job. I just have job and need to get job done, and we're not really doing, because again, compare it to like The Nice Guys. There's conviction in that movie. There's passion in every scene. There's something coming out of that. There's just punching the clock, you know, punching the time card from in every scene. And then I don't know, maybe I'm being too harsh on Wahlberg, but I've never really found him that enjoyable. But this is just I don't understand how he got this. He's not who I would have picked amongst all of the actors in the world. I would like to know how that happened.
I wonder if there was a bit of push and pull, or tug of war over how hard-boiled the project was going to be. I mean, watching this, I don't feel it's going to happen. But you know, when it was originally announced, the idea was this was going to be the beginning of a big IP thing. And I think the initial idea was something along the lines of that they would do a theatrical release, and that then it might lead to television, meaning streaming sort of offshoots, if you like. Now, that's when it was first announced, which is several years ago now. And this is the thing, is that Black's been on it now for a great many years. I mean, there's, you know, if you're actually looking at what Black has got credits on since The Predator and this, there's nothing. It's 7 years, and there's absolutely nothing in between. Now, I don't think that's entirely true. I suspect that he's probably worked on some things without credit, but I think he's ended up spending an awful lot of time going back and forth on this. And I wonder if perhaps, you know, and this is kind of reflecting, like I say, when we get to do Payback, because that's kind of what happened on Payback. You know, the way that you made this ultra hard-boiled, very, very hard film, and suddenly the studio said, yes, we know that's the script, and we know you did it exactly the way you said you were going to, but we think we can sell it better if you go back and reshoot for 10 days and soften it. And Brian Helgeland wouldn't do it. And we're talking about the same guy who has got the credit on Spencer Confidential. I can't believe he didn't get rewritten on that. I really can't. He's just too good a writer. But you never know. But on that one, if you watch the director's cut, his version of it, which is 90 minutes, it's very lean. This is Payback. It's very lean and mean. And one suspects deep down that that's kind of what Shane Black wanted to do, having done these. But on the other hand, absolutely, you look at the two preceding films of this type that he's made, and they are very overtly comedic, but they've managed to find that sweet spot between genuine humor, some genuine verbal wit as well, but also genuine dead people. You know, you don't pretend, like this film does, that deaths do not matter at all, that it's complete pantomime, doesn't matter, it never matters, only bad guys die. I mean, there is one shot with a cop, you have to assume he's only stunned and not dead, otherwise only criminals get killed, so that makes it all right, you know. And from that point of view, it clearly doesn't get it right, and you can just sense that. And given that this is not that short a film, it's okay, it's very long end credits. I mean, you look at the number of people worked on or credited on CG, and the rubbish job that they did, and I just feel really sorry for them. But you know, you just sort of think it's a sea of people working on this thing. And I think the problem is there's that many people because they're doing it very, very, very fast.
Yeah.
And that's obviously the problem. But I think nonetheless that you've got a situation where, because if you do look at the beginning of the film and you do look at the ending of the film, that feels like real Richard Stark, and like a real Parker story, more or less. Updated. Even with Wahlberg in it, it's sort of okay. Yeah, sure, you've got to have, the leading man and leading lady with no clothes on, but it's more or less in their undies. You kind of have to have that. But I think that works. I genuinely think that there's, let's get into it when you want to. But I'm happy to rhapsodize about that. But absolutely, I think the big issue is in the middle. Almost none of it works for more than about 10 seconds at a time. And the one thing I wanted to interject, putting my Woody Allen Broadway Danny Rose persona on, if I can interject something at this juncture, is I don't, Matt was saying he's not a big Stark fan. You should be. You got to read those books. They're fantastic. But of course, Donald Westlake, who gets a very nice nod. Did you spot that, Luke? At the beginning, Tony Shalhoub's office, it's Westlake Industries.
I missed that. I did miss it, damn it.
Site. It's only written on the wall.
Yeah, I did pick up on that, funnily enough.
Yeah, right. And which is great. It's nice of them to do it. Like I say, Shane Black is a decent guy. And I think I'm glad he did that. But of course, the other thing that Westlake is known for, and he's very prolific, but of course, he was known for writing his book of caper books featuring John Dortmunder, who got adapted into a number of films, the first and best of which is The Hot Rock with Robert Redford, the late Robert Redford. And it's a fantastic movie, scripted by William Goldman, a fantastic writer. And that started off as a Richard Stark Parker book, but it kept coming out funny. So he rewrote it and started a new series about a bunch of thieves where things always go wrong, and comedically wrong. And what's weird is I kept thinking they should have been adapting a Dortmunder book, not a Parker book, because then that would have been okay. You know, and in the Dortmunder books, people don't get killed off. The whole ethos is it's a caper. It's not about robbery in that sense. So that the great difference in weight between a heist and a caper and a robbery movie. And I kept wishing that they'd gone to do, and again, anyone who hasn't read or seen The Hot Rock, go do it. It's fabulous. And there's a long series of Dortmunder books. And in fact, and I'll just get this in there, there's a great Dortmunder book from the mid-1970s called Jimmy the Kid. And they decide, the gang that John Dortmunder works with decides that they're going to do a heist based on something they've read in a novel. And the novel is called Child Heist, and it's written by Richard Stark and features Parker. So there is, inside that book, all these chapters from this Parker book that only exists in that book.
I
just wanted to get that in there.
Great.
Isn't that great?
That's great.
Anyway, I'll shut up now.
Yeah, we can dive into the actual story now. When the thing opened up and I saw Thomas Jane, I was like, why didn't they just cast him as Parker?
A little bit, yeah.
Yeah. He's in it for like 5 seconds, and he's the only person who has gravitas.
Yeah, and he's definitely closer to Jack Palance than anybody else.
Absolutely, and
I was like,
because he gets this nice big credit. I thought he was going to come back at the end. He was going to turn out he wasn't.
Dude is barely in the film, and he's like, in the credits, he's bam, slap dab, like right at the top. I'm like, all right, he must be coming back. Oh no. He's gone. He's like, yeah, I'll come work on your movie for you got me for 2 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
He's toast. It is about what, 10, 12, 15 even?
It's maybe about 10 minutes. He dies really quickly. Very, very quickly. But let's talk about the opening. I really want to talk about the opening briefly. That whole opening heist, like the conceit of it is fine. I was interested in like the idea of it, but the minute Wahlberg opens up his mouth, I lose it loses believability. I can't buy anything that he's saying or doing. Like him being like, "There's the girl in here that you love, isn't there?" But I'm just shut up, man. Just shut up. Like I just don't buy. I don't buy the character that you're selling. I really, really struggle with that with him in just about every film I've ever seen him in. I always have. But this opening scene sort of sets out the chaos that is this whole movie, and that is you have this thing, this robbery going on. You have this one guy who's trying to pretend like, we're trying to, portray that he's super smart and can read all these people. And then you have this bizarre moment where random editing cuts to random couple pulling up in a car. Guy gets out, looks inside, sees there's a robbery going on, and decides to rob the robbers. That then results in this insane chase sequence of cars both going very fast, but also you can clearly tell that they're going very slowly, which to me was, again, a sign of terrible editing and cinematography. And everything was like, what? I can tell this car is going 5 miles an hour. What? I shouldn't be able to tell that this car is going super slow as it's bashing through some fences. But even like the logistics of it, like they race out of this stupid car park, then they're bashing through backyards, and then suddenly they're just in the middle of the racetrack from Mission Impossible 2. I'm like, what is going on? And then these horses are all over the place. It just pure and utter chaos. And none of it was making sense. None of it was flowing. And then the thing that solidified me not going to enjoy this was Parker murdering that guy in cold blood. And I'm like, you are now, as the character of this film, the protagonist of this film, you are now utterly irredeemable. Utterly irredeemable, because we don't know who the guy was who stole from them, but he's just some guy who was trying to, get some money, I guess. I don't know why he did what he did, but he's got a wife, he's got a kid, and you just blew his head off and then think, oh, you threw the woman some money, now we're okay with you? F you, man. Like, that to me was a step too far for what this film was trying to do with this character, to make him this lovable rogue. Because I like a good lovable rogue. I like one who maybe does things that are problematic, but the coldness in which he did that said, now I cannot like you at all. This isn't like something like Drive, where you're being won over by the driver and his character, and then when he like loses his shit and is bashing people with hammers and stuff, you're just you're jarred by it, but but you're sort of still kind of on his side. With this, I'm like, no. And he never, this character, this version of Parker never won me back, especially the end. Jump to the end just briefly, when he does kill Zen, and I'm like, oh wow, you're just all right. This is you are heartless. And I don't feel that's necessarily 100% what I get from the books of Parker that I've read. Maybe so, maybe it's just the execution of this in this film. But the character of Parker in this, just even take out like the adaptation side, this version, this didn't feel coherent. He's ruthless 1 minute, but he's fun and zany the next. And those puzzle pieces were from two different puzzles.
I really like the beginning from that point of view, in the sense that, you just hear these two people talking and it's a black screen and they're saying they can't knock this guy off and he's an idiot. He's this guy. No, he's the son of, you can't do it. So he makes him work for that, work properly with it as part of the team. And then you get into this thing, and they're knocking off this race course. So of course they're near the race course, although, because it's shot in Sydney as well as Mission Impossible 2. So it probably is the same.
Exactly.
Which is a really funny idea, right? I like that. But that hardness is from the books. That is what Parker's like in the books. In the book, that line where Wahlberg says, she asks, when he goes to see the widow, and he says, how do you feel about killing people? And he says, mostly I don't like doing it because it's counterproductive and it brings the heat. That's taken from one of the books. And that is absolutely Parker's position. But he regularly will kill people who gets in his way. He doesn't want to, but he'll do it, and he's got no problems about it at all. So when he does, so in that sense, that section at the front, and that which is also the closest course to the Hunter, and then the section at the back, if you like, they feel like they're from a Parker book. So I'm okay with that because I like the Parker books. But absolutely, given that that's a minority compared with the big chunk of the middle of the book, which tonally has a completely different feel, that's where you've got your problem. You know, what I will say though about the ending is that I do think, and I did think, I will give Black credit for this. I think that it's quite clear from how it's written that you were supposed to think that he was only going to be about the money, and that it wasn't about friendship, and it wasn't about sticking to your code, about the principle, and that therefore you're supposed to sort of forget that and think that he's going to let her off. And if he had, I would hate the movie. I don't hate the movie because he doesn't let her off, because the way it's set up at the beginning, and because he makes a semi-promise to the widow.
Yeah.
If you put that in there, but you don't have it pay off in what is a bleak way, then you're betraying that real loyalty to the genre. You know, having said that, does it sit properly with the middle of the movie? Well, no.
No,
I'm shutting up now.
You know, I have to agree with that. When it got to the point where he was in the hotel room, I was like, well, as much as it doesn't gel with the middle bit, you say, I was like, well, he has to kill her. He can't not do it.
Yeah, he does have to kill her in the end.
Yeah, like that is the promise to the widow, because he's meant to be friends with Philly, you know, Thomas Jane's character. So it has to happen. Yeah. But I sort of wonder, I'll shut up in a second, Matt, but I do sort of wonder, as you were saying, Sergio, maybe this was a situation where Black wrote it and it was darker than what we get, and then rewrites and reshoots soften up the middle to make it stupid and playful, and those two end scenes are all that sort of remain of what could have been maybe a more authentic Parker adaptation and general tone for the whole piece, because those two moments just do not gel with anything else that happens in the movie with those characters. But even between Parker and Zen, you know, the whole like, oh, well, I was just playing you the whole time. No, I think the script was writing you like this because you weren't meant to kill her in the end. But, you know, something won out. Black's original idea maybe, or the conceit from the books won out overall. But yeah, Matt.
Well, I mean, you've both said pretty much all that needs to be said, I think, and I agree with it all. I think he has to kill her at the end. And I do get the strong impression that there's been studio interference. It's along the lines that you say, Luke, and that you've mentioned, Sergio, that given what Black's produced in the past, I find it hard to believe that this is the vision he had of adapting a series of books that I think it's fairly safe to assume he's a fan of.
Yep.
And those two, you know, those, as Sergio says, the start and the end being closest to what the books are, and the middle being so jarring, just can't be anything else to me other than you've got to lighten it up. And because I didn't the opening scenes of that dialogue in darkness, that is brilliant, and the first few bits are very, very good. But then I found very quickly I was in a generic car chase through a load of horses, and I thought, why am I doing this? Why is this happening? You know, and then it developed into this. Then there was the bit about shooting the fella in the car, and I thought, like you, Luke, I thought there's a long way to go to redeem yourself from that. But balancing that with the end, I don't know if it's better if he then sort of has to go on the, you know, that's a sort of development that he finds the will to carry out what he's promised to do. Because I think that is quite a good scene although Wahlberg's not great in it. But when he makes the promise, that's a good scene. And this softening of the edges, for me, means that what you get is a promising start and a bit of a killer ending with a generic action flick in the middle that is full of people I have no interest in, you know. And it's just one car chase, gun battle, and fist fight after the other. And that's a big problem for me, because I think what you've said about the book, Sergio, and that's a situation I will rectify. And the ending being so right makes me think it's a crying shame that the middle is so bad.
Yeah,
you know, and which really is just another way of saying what you two have already said. But what a strange choice, you know, to have that sort of great, fascinating opening that really does work, great ending, and then just screw everything up in the intervening 2 hours. You know?
Yeah, because the other thing with that opening, the whole sort of setup of Zen being there and shooting everyone because she wants to take this money to go fund her other heist. It felt so convoluted to me. I thought there's got to be a smoother way of getting her and Parker to work together than this. A heist gone wrong turns into he's got to work with, like, the idea of that is fun, but the execution of that here just made me think, all right, this isn't working. Either make it work or come up with something smoother, because
well,
all right.
Yeah, I think is that not an issue of two or three stories being meshed together? Because that sounds to me like a different plot. And the plot I wanted was Parker going for revenge for Thomas Jane.
Well, yeah, I mean, look, you read The Hunter, right? I mean, and that opening part is kind of a version of The Hunter.
Yes.
So, which is the first Parker book, and in that one, you know, he's set up a heist. Him, his wife, and this guy called Mal. And although in some of the films he gets called Val, and but he gets double crossed and gets left for dead, and which is, you know, the point blank beginning and the payback beginning, and but it's from the book. And the one thing they don't do in the book, and this is the interesting thing, and this is what I mean about how tough Parker is in the book. In the book, he's on his way to go and kill Mal or Val. And he gets shot by his wife in anticipation. So, you know, he was going to double cross the other guy anyway. I mean, this is what I mean. I mean, these are hardened criminals. But in that one, that's the thing. So a plan is seemingly been executed, but the reason it goes wrong is partly because the partner needs to steal all the money because they want to do something else with that money. Now, in the book, it's because they want to buy themselves back into the outfit, which obviously gets mentioned here. And in the book series, in the second one, he goes and gets plastic surgery. And the book's called The Man with the Getaway Face. And leads to a third book called The Outfit, which is much more about the outfit. And so there's bits of that in this film too. So all that stuff about the outfit and how he outwitted them. And he sort of as long as you don't go back to New York, you'll be okay. That's roughly from the third book, for instance. So that's how they're kind of mixing and matching. But in fact, The Outfit, the book, was always a kind of sequel to The Hunter, really. So it's a legitimate thing to do. And I think, obviously, I think you're absolutely spot on. I mean, I think that there's an element of that where this is the kind of issues that this is having to wrestle with. Because on the one hand, it's sort of doing what it says it's going to do, which is to try and knit together the world of Parker, you know, Parker's World, maybe should have been the title, and, you know, or Parker's Way or something like that, you know, and something that makes it about the character. Because when you get to that ending, what you're supposed to have, surely, is this sense that he says to it, you think you know me, you don't know me. And I'm going to prove it by putting a bullet in your head, basically. The problem is that you don't know either of them, because I don't think Rosa Salazar is particularly very good in it either, in the sense of,
She's not.
The character doesn't help, but you never buy that she's genuinely doing this because she's a patriot and wants to, help her country, right? And it's an odd thing to go for, and I suspect they were slightly stuck with how to handle the character. So it's an interesting idea, but you needed a different kind of actor. You needed both of them. And in actual fact, Mel Gibson, as he played it, if he'd been the right age, and the way he plays it in Payback is, I think, legitimate. I think it's a very close view of that character. But unfortunately, there's Wahlberg is this charisma-free zone. And if you've got this vaguely psychopathic character, then you've got to be Jack Palance or Lee Marvin or even Robert Duvall. I mean, Robert Duvall, I think Westlake always thought that Duvall in the outfit, the film, kind of got the closest in terms of bringing the character to the screen, even though that's a film that changes the book quite a lot, which is a little odd, actually, but it's an interesting idea.
If you're going to have a character that is like you're describing, Sergio, I agree. You've got to have an actor that is able to still make that character somehow sympathetic. Be that I don't understand this man, but I get why he's doing it. And Wahlberg, there's no chance of that happening here, because there's no way that Wahlberg's got the chops to do that. I don't think.
What about Jake Gyllenhaal? We mentioned
he was already in Roadhouse. He did Roadhouse for Amazon, and
they're doing a second one. Big hit. It's a terrible film. Yeah.
I don't know. What do you think of Gyllenhaal? I can buy that more than Mark Wahlberg.
I can see it. Well, Gyllenhaal, when in the right, in the right circumstances, is a very, very good actor. And I think, you think about him in like Nightcrawler or something like that. Like he can do things that are disturbing, but also be kind of vulnerable and stuff with something like, I don't know, Zodiac. So you mesh those kind of things together, you could get a pretty cool performance out of someone like that. But we're at the moment we're kind of we've been dogging a lot on Wahlberg and his character, with just a little bit of like Rosa Salazar. But I mean, in my opinion, every actor in this was either miscast or just phoning it in.
Or underused.
LaKeith Stanfield as Grofield. What the hell was that character? What the absolute hell? That wasn't a character. That was just there's that line in Raymond Chandler's essay, Simple Art of Murder, where he says Sherlock Holmes is just a couple of lines of dialogue and an attitude or something like that. And it's like, this guy is just a concept. He's not a character. He's just a concept. He's just, I have a theater that doesn't make any money, and I respond to things like in ways of saying, "Oh damn," or he's just a guy who responds to end of action beats with quip. Yeah. That's it.
My least favorite performance, I mean, in a film full of bad performances, the one that really grated on me was Kincaid, who
was pretty okay.
Wild-eyed.
I liked him in a weird way. Yeah.
Wild-eyed. Maybe you liked him for the reason I didn't. So, he was just wild-eyed, over the top, amateur dramatic scene chewing, and I just thought every time he was on, I thought, God, I need an aspirin. You know what I mean? And,
but wasn't that everybody? Like, wasn't that Keegan-Michael Key? Like, he was terrible. His girlfriend was terrible. The guy who was like the getaway driver, I can't remember who played him now. But he was like, everyone they were playing in Black's previous movies. You have Robert Downey Jr.'s character, right, in Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, who is he is not necessarily over the top, but then he's meeting people that are over the top. Or you have The Nice Guys, where you have Russell Crowe, who is the more kind of put together guy, against the Odd Couple pairing, and then they're also meeting people who are over the top. Here, like everyone, it almost like they're fighting each other to be the zany Shane Black over the top character that everyone talks about or remembers. Rein it the fuck in. I don't know why. It was very difficult to really get on board with anyone in this. I mean, even like, what about the bad guy? What do we
Tony
think about
Shalhoub?
Lazzoni, and also what's the other guy's name? Phineas Paul, Lazzoni and Phineas Paul.
I mean, I'm a big fan of Tony Shalhoub, but it was a very by the numbers performance. I think it wasn't very monkish. But
I was just going to say that, Serge. When you look at what he does with Monk and how much character he gives Monk, then this is really like, Marlon Brando as Jor-El, isn't it? This is just doing what he has to do to get the paycheck. You know what I mean? And the other fella, I mean, I just don't know what to say about that. Sorry, Sergio, it was my turn to interrupt you. You carry on.
You should. I'm owed at least 3 interruptions, Matt. Keep going, mate. I've been hogging like crazy, and that's despite my speech impediment. No, I was going to say, just because I looked it up. So it's Chai Hansen who played the driver, and Davis. Just to get back to Kincaid a minute, I actually really enjoyed Kincaid, but it's like he's in a different film from everybody else, and in a way, so that can be absolutely irritating. I liked him though because he was one of the few who felt like in his own, you genuinely felt that there was something else going on. Like, the way he thinks he's got this bantering relationship with the Shalhoub character, and he really doesn't. And I just found that very funny. He keeps getting beaten up and doesn't die. I have to admit, I actually enjoyed that just because I think he managed to bring something to the character. And actually, the same with Chai Hansen in a weird way. He's the kind of stoner driver type who we've seen him in other sorts of films, and of course it does, from a plot point, sort of slightly pay off in a nice, unexpected way, right? Because when they're kind of tricking the billionaire. And by the way, the bit when he shoots Mark Cuban, that was funny. Come on, that was actually Mark Cuban as himself being shot. I thought that was great.
Sure.
You'll want to do that to Mark Cuban, surely, Okay, fine. Wow, you guys are really hard-boiled. You're very hard to impress. I thought that was funny. Because we all hate billionaires. So it was great to see one just get it in the leg,
I know I don't disagree. I just sort of couldn't. I struggled to get behind anyone in this, but I think it's because everyone was vying for the spotlight, and it made it hard for me to care, because it's like everyone is overacting in every scene. Everything is cranked to 11, which that for me was a struggle, which meant when there are these moments, I'm like, maybe in another film, maybe in a different scenario, maybe if this was toned down here or there, like I could get into it, but because it was just so like loud, it was just like, all right.
That's what I mean. My overriding feeling was this was noisy.
It's just like The Predator. This is just like The Predator. Exactly the same.
I did enjoy some of the dialogue. I like I like Black's approach to kind of casting off one-liners. I think if you actually just just listen to some of the dialogue, if you like, I think it's genuinely quite witty sometimes. I did quite enjoy it. But yeah, absolutely. I think what you're not even remotely in is invested. And yet, in actual fact, there's a reasonable amount of dovetailing in the plot, which I think is nice. I mean, I think there's a neat reversal about how they're going to get the statue out. I think that's well handled, because you set it up how not even Parker can get it out. He can't get it out. The time lock means he can't get it out. And yet it's presented, oh yeah, he got it out, no problem. Happens like that. And a big chase and whatever. And then, oh no, wait. And I thought, no, that's neat. That's smart. I like that, because they set it up. That's properly constructed and well written. You set it up. It's impossible. It can't happen. It's kind of like a golden age locked room type thing.
Yeah. I got that vibe on that, and I will give it kudos for that. Yeah, definitely give it kudos for that. Yeah. And the explanation of how he's done it, that is typical Golden Age as well.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought that was great. And
I just think to myself, that is really good in a Golden Age whodunit type of thing. But I'm in a film noir. I'm in a heist movie.
We should probably
You
caveat.
cannot be pleased.
There are golden age tropes even in noir. I mean, there are twists and reveals that are harken back to the golden
half jest. I half jest.
I did like.
So
oh, sorry. No, go ahead.
Oh no, I was going to add on to that as well. Like that sort of the big heist of the vault of how that was structured. In case people are listening who haven't watched the film, I won't spoil everything. That was I would say that was well handled. The thing that let it down for me was when Villain Man has to come in and be like, "Oh, how did you do it? Oh, you are so clever. Oh." And it's just like, then you kind of think, all right, stop talking down to your audience, please, because you had something that was interesting, and then you kind of pull the rug out by characters being just cardboard cutout cliches.
Well, the other thing I thought they did, again, it's quite subtle, but I liked it, and it relates slightly back to the books, but not directly, was this business just at the end of that scene in the vault when he sort of says, the outfit's losing money, isn't it? And I just keep noticing that when we've been hitting your places, there's always a lot less money. That was right there at the beginning. Now, you kind of ignore that at the beginning, because in the beginning, that was always the motor in The Hunter, was the idea that they pull off a heist, but there really isn't enough to split three ways, which is why the double cross happens. If there'd been more money, the double cross might not have happened, because in that one, Val Mal wants to get back into the syndicate, stroke the outfit. So here you ignore that a little bit, because it's kind of like, oh, there isn't really enough, and you think, oh, that's why she's hitting them all. She just wants it all. It's just greed, because there isn't maybe as much as they thought there was going to be. But the fact that pays off about an hour and a half later, and it's important once again because it does allow for us to feel like Parker will in fact get away with it, and he's actually thought it through, in the sense that he has more, and I use the word advisedly because obviously there's links to it, leverage. It has more leverage with the outfit than he would have had in the past. This whole business about they're a big business, and big businesses are having trouble. And because I thought, I did think, I don't know if you guys are a fan. I'm big fans of the original Leverage TV show, and I always thought that was very amusing. And it's a heist a week show, and a con men job, and I like it. And therefore, I thought one of the nice things was the way that they handled the robbery aspect of it was very much in that style. So that's a by the by. But I thought, again, the fact that you got things properly paying off, like the fact that the principal villain, because of a promise that's been made, because of a breaking of the basic code of conduct, pays off at the end. Because those things are there, that's why this is better than most, and that's how it's a Shane Black movie, because it's better than most, but it's not even remotely as good as it should be. But I feel like I have to cheerlead just a little bit, because it is disappointing, but it has good stuff in it.
Things like that are a double-edged sword for me, because they're either little nuggets that you have to cling on to for dear life in the midst of all the rest of the rubbish, or they make the rest of the rubbish even more frustrating, because there is that stuff there that could be good, and whatever the cause for the whole middle section of the film being what it is, I hate it even more because there are things like that going on. Do you know what I mean? So it's you either look at the good or the bad, and you either hold on to the good, or you get consumed by how bad the bad is because of the good. And I don't know which side of that fence I particularly want to fall on. But
I keep being reminded of, I think a lot of people have said it may even have been you guys, about The Nice Guys, saying, wouldn't it be great if it was a regular TV show, or if it was like a 10-part show on Netflix or something, or Amazon Prime? And I kept wondering if this, instead of being this kind of over-egged, rather uncertain, rather unwieldy movie that feels like it's shooting off in all kinds of different directions and just can't hasn't got enough traction to feel like it's going to stick to one tone and one type. If instead it was like a 10-part series, I mean, how of course, if they genuinely adapted the books, that would be great. But in actual fact, you know, what you were saying, Luke, you know, where you were saying that I can't get behind this character. And the trouble is, if you're genuinely going to do the character from the books, and with all the issues that come, and I mean, you know, ideally set it in period, of course, set it in the 60s and 70s. You know, the majority of the books were written in, you know, I mean, we could get into it, but, you know, this interesting publishing period where basically the Parker books are mainly published between 62 and 74. And then after Payback, Westlake starts writing them again. So 25 years later, he starts writing them again in the late 90s. And in total, if you include, because they're, you know, Grofield is a character, I felt like they were giving Grofield nice bits of extra stuff about his acting and all that stuff. Because, of course, Grofield is a character who is not only important in the series, but had 4 spin-offs.
Yeah, so they wanted to set that up.
Yeah, and that could have been interesting. You know, if you include the Grofield books, there's actually 28 Stark books that feature either Parker, and then there's the weird little, you know, the Jimmy the Kid one, which makes it 29. But in actual fact, I think they would feel thin. I you know, because of the way they're written, they're great. I love them. You know, I've reread them more than once. But I really wonder, you would have to do like 2 or 3 of them probably to do maybe a 2-hour, you know, a 2-hour mini, you know, broken down sort of thing. And, you know, I don't think anybody will ever do it because I think he's just too harsh a character. There's just no way. I will add, though, I will say, you know, there are interesting things like, you know, Department Q, which I think I personally thought was a great success. And that's one novel that they managed to really sustain it for 9 episodes, I think. So it's not that it can't be done, but that's a very different kind of storytelling and different kind of story, you know, whereas I think that you look at the early, particularly the Stark books from the 60s and early 70s, they feel, you know, they're these kind of, 50,000 word books, you know, these paperback originals for pocket books, and it's just a different era. It's a different approach to telling stories, right?
Yeah, I think if they wanted to adapt Parker, warts and all, like his ruthlessness, I don't think that really would be a problem in a world of, you know, where shows like Succession are huge, or Game of Thrones, House of, you know, where people love to watch shows, and Always Sunny in Philadelphia. People love to watch shows with nasty protagonists. I think it could work, but I think it just, like those ones I mentioned, it really depends on the creative team behind it and how they're doing it, because it's that balancing act of, how do, you know, we use Always Sunny in Philadelphia as an example. How do you make your audience like 4 or 5 just absolutely disgusting, irredeemable people and somehow find them lovable? Yet that show manages to do that to great success for the last like 13 years, which is insane. 13, 14, maybe 15. I don't know. They've been going for forever now. You know, how do you do that? You know, that's what this needed, especially if they wanted to turn it into some sort of series or whatever. That's what I think it needed, and that could have worked. I think I would have been fine with that. I mean, even if we sort of compare him a little bit to Daniel Craig's Bond, that guy's an asshole for 5 films. He's just an asshole. Like there's nothing really nice about him. You know, there's a couple little moments, but like he's generally just a sad, nasty guy. But I was there, seated for every single one of his films except for No Time to Die.
Craig would have been great in this.
A version of Craig could have worked. Not Craig now, but Craig back.
Oh, so harsh.
Do you think Craig now could have done it? I don't know. He likes.
Hey, listen, Craig's my age precisely. I'm just someone who's just had my birthday. I'm having to deal with the whole, I'm older than both of you guys. So, I'm feeling my age. I'm, creaking a
You're
bit.
having your Star Trek II Wrath of Khan.
That's
Kirk
right, mate. And well, in
crisis.
fact, what's annoying is that I'm older than Shadow was.
You're not that
film.
much older than me, Sergio. I can tell you.
I just look it, but bits of me falling out and being pulled out. But let's not get into it.
But
pull me back for a marathon, man. I'm gonna have stories.
There we go. Two things I do want to mention, because we sort of talked about this film being a little bit all over the place, and I think what I keep coming back to in my head is that there's a lack of coherent. There's a lack of identity with this, and I think two particular things highlight that. One is the very uneven score, which at one point has your really kind of typical borderline cliche. Alan Silvestri, by the way, did the score. A great composer who, well, he was great. I don't think he's done anything that's wowed me for a very long time. But anyway, there's moments where it's like very, very classic noir music, what you would expect from a film noir, trumpets, all that kind of stuff. And then it just it just kind of like intrudes itself into the movie at times, and you're like, why is this music here? Because this film hasn't really lent into its hard-boiledness or its noirness as much as it could have, but the music is trying to remind you that, hey, this could have been this, but it's really not this, but it could have been. And then suddenly then it will descend into other music styles that just are just your typical action blockbuster, and you're just like, oh, what is going on with the music? But in addition to that, we haven't talked about the opening credits properly. But when he gets shot and he falls into the river, No Time to Die, not No Time to Die, Die Another Day, but also Skyfall. These credits are the opening credits of Skyfall, exactly. Which he falls into the water, and he is underwater for most of those opening credits, which is what is happening in this. The whole time I was like, this is Skyfall. Like, what is going on? Like, does this film want to be a Bond film? Does this film want to be a retro, harken back to a 60s style? What is it wanting to be? And I think the music in these opening credits just really solidified that no one really knew what the F they were doing or what they were trying to. There's no coherent vision, I don't think, with this. And I don't know, but what do you guys think about the music in the opening? Those opening credits, because they, on their own in places, are interesting, but in this, just really didn't work.
The music definitely. There were times when I thought, this sounds like the Chinatown music.
Yeah,
and I could quite happily think, if I close my eyes, think, is this the Chinatown music? It's close. Or something like the Farewell My Lovely score from '75. That typical, like you say, Luke, that typical muted trumpet, sad, melancholy for his style, and I was thinking this. I wish I was watching a film that this music fitted, really, because what this film really wants or really deserves is one of those sort of late 80s, early 90s thumping action scores that you get in this type of film from that period. That's what but I agree, it's all part and parcel of this overriding sense that either nobody knew what they wanted and nobody knew what they were doing and what they were working towards, or some did, some didn't, and they couldn't find middle ground. And so you end up with just a patchwork quilt of styles, ideas, themes, and everything else. And the music is just another example of that. It's the musical version of what you're seeing on screen. It's something for some parts, it's something for other parts, and it's not a consistent whole at all. The credits, I take your point about Skyfall. Yeah, I take your point about Skyfall. But I've nothing major to say about the credits, I don't think, unless Sergey's got anything that prompts a thought.
Well, all I was going to say was that I agree with you guys completely. I think there's something actually genuinely odd and off about the first half of the film's score, because I wonder if Silvestri didn't write it. The kind of trumpet music feels unusually synthetic. He's a guy who does very little with electronics. And I think that it isn't particularly successful. I feel like they added it on. I genuinely think somebody else did it. I could be dead wrong about that, of course, but I don't think it's him. It doesn't sound like him because he's done a Chinatown style score, of course, and that's the one for Who Framed Roger Rabbit. And so if you want to know what a Silvestri version of that sounds like, absolutely no problem. Go listen to that. Silvestri, of course, has been around since the 70s. And, he started off writing music he wrote episodes of the TV series Chips, which I'm sure we all watched. Matt and I are just about old enough to have actually seen it on its first run,
I did watch Chips. I did watch Chips.
On LWT. And I think that he wrote most of the episodic score. He didn't write the theme music. That's a guy called Jim Parker. But he did, that was his first big credit, writing for the episode music for that. And he did about 70 of those. But he's mainly known as Robert Zemeckis' composer. He's done practically all Robert Zemeckis' films, with maybe 2 exceptions, and he's still working with him. Obviously, most people today, despite the fact Luke doesn't like it, will know him because, of course, he wrote the Avengers theme, which most people love.
Which you're talking about the Marvel Avengers, right?
Yeah, the actual theme.
Yeah. No, I don't mind the
he wrote
theme
that,
for Avengers.
and I think it's very memorable. In fact, it's one of the few genuinely memorable bits of score from any of the Marvel movies, because it's one of the things.
He did the Captain America march as well, I think. He did the Captain America
he did the Captain America movies, and it came from that. Yeah. And I think he did that very, very well. Actually, no, hang on. Did he? Oh, never mind. But he, I think his theme for the Avengers is kind of great, and it's got used a lot. And of course, he wrote Predator as well. Which does have a bit of electronics. I think exactly. It's great. I mean, I love the theme music from Predator, that he wrote. And the second half of the film, which has most of the big action, sustained action scenes, very much feel like the kind of music that he was writing in the 80s and 90s. You could take it straight out of Back to the Future or The Abyss, films like that. And they work just fine. It's the kind of music he's famous for, that kind of rush music, let's call it that, and it works very well. I think the first half feels like somebody else did it, so I'm just going to say that the theme music is odd because he was the original composer on Mission Impossible, and he got kicked off that because it didn't work out, so they got Danny Elfman in to replace him, and I think that, and you can hear it because he eventually, I think, used it on Eraser. But he kind of wrote a kind of romantic melody instead of a big action type thing as the main theme. And he does that here. I don't think it's very memorable. It's rather bland. I like the fact that he's going for that, but I don't think it's just a particularly good melody. So I'm sorry to say. So that's a bit disappointing. I like the credits per se. They're odd. They're jarring. They're not what you expect. They're very cartoony. They kind of have a pop art feel. And I don't know if you've seen it, but it reminded me, while I was watching it, of a John Frankenheimer film from 1973, 74, called 99% pure, Dead, which is also known as Call Harry Crown. And that one has got images from Roy Lichtenstein. So it's all kind of pop art. Now, the kind of music that we're thinking it should have had, of course, Shane Black has done before, and he did it for the end credits of Iron Man 3. Just watch the end credits of Iron Man 3. Yep. And that was also a very 70s funk type, David Shire taking a Pelham 1-2-3 style piece of music, plus with a kind of graphic feel behind it, which is kind of what we get here at the front. So I think so. He's got form. So again, it's kind of what Black wanted, I suspect. I don't think it quite works, but I like the idea behind it because it sort of
Same.
sends you back, and I like that. Like I say, I agree with you. It's odd, but it is the same guy. It is Daniel Kleinman who did the titles for Skyfall and so on. So there are absolutely similarities. But for instance, there's a great shot when, and this is why that particularly made me think of 99, 44% Dead. Sorry, it's a terrible title. It's so hard to remember it. It's a very interesting movie. You should definitely see it. Originally, Sergio Leone was going to make it, and it's got this wonderful opening sequence underwater that was actually written with Leone. But anyway, from John Frankenheimer made it eventually, and it's got that shot where they go into a shot of Wahlberg, and it's a photo, and you go into the pixels, and the pixels are bullets. And then it keeps going. That's a wonderful idea. Some of the others, not so much, but that's great. And it has a fun feel to it. I wish it had a piece of music that was, much more of a funky 70s style song, because you're just thinking, no, he wants to be doing like a Jackie Brown type vibe, the like, again, a film from much later that looks back to the 70s. You know that's where Shane Black's head is at. But anyway, so it has interesting elements, but there you go. Incidentally, that Frankenheim movie I was talking about, the theme music for that was written by Henry Mancini. So there you go.
There we go. Yeah, no, I agree. I agree that there are moments in the opening credits, in that sequence that, I mean, also those credits come in like so late in the game. I'm like, why are we like 20 minutes in, guys? You're not a James Bond movie. You're not Mission Impossible. Mission Impossible have done that for the last like 3 films where they're like 20 minutes in, they do the burn and light the fuse thing. But I think there were bits to it that were fun and interesting, but it just, because of the kind of film that it was, I thought, I guess the point is, I wish it was in a better film. I wish it was in a better film, because the idea of it was fun. It just needed to not be so obviously doing what was done in Skyfall, and it needed better music. It absolutely needed better music.
Well, we need to talk about the Christmas setting.
Yes, let's. The reason we probably haven't done that so far is because in our Kiss Kiss Bang Bang episode, we went deep into Shane Black and Christmas. But we should also talk about it here, because it is.
We've done it now.
It is.
I think that's what makes it. Let's not overemphasize. I think it one of the things another thing that makes it a genuine Black movie, no matter what the studio interference was, is it's set at Christmas.
It's Christmas.
Set in the snow. So he loves Christmas,
Yes.
So I think that, and there's a fun aspect to the film, but not as much as the other films.
And it's because back when we did Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, one of the interesting things that we discovered about Black and why he chooses Christmas is because he likes that juxtaposition of this magical holiday set against the most nastiest, corrupted, violent scenarios. And then when you think about it, like, again, I think this also comes from its potentially being filmed in Australia. It struggled to make me feel like it was Christmas, because everything felt so sunny and bright. It's like if you've ever seen the sequel to A Christmas Story, A Christmas Story, which A Christmas Story is a fantastic 1980s Christmas movie. It's brilliant. The sequel is crap. One of the things that's interesting about the sequel, though, is they go to the effort to literally rebuild the block that they to match the real street that they filmed on back in the 80s. They rebuilt it. But the problem is they filmed it in, I can't remember, it was a very sunny country. And that's the big problem. Every scene is, here's a Christmas setting, here's snow on the ground, but here is bright summer skies. And it doesn't compute. And I think that was something that was happening with this as well. Like, there's a scene when they're in New York, the first scene in New York, and there's a little bit of snow on the ground, and there's a little bit of decoration. I'm like, oh, right, of course, this is a Shane Black movie, and it needs to be set at Christmas. None of this feels like Christmas. Yeah. But the irony is, Lethal Weapon, I argue, is one of the most Christmassy movies you can get, despite that being set in LA and there being no snow. There was just something about this that didn't feel, and maybe because we're meant to be in New York, but we're not really in New York. We're elsewhere. But when we think about the opening of him ruthlessly murdering some guy on a horse track, and then blowing Zen's head off, these ideas, this violence set in and around Christmas, like that is classic Black stuff. I just wish it had paid off better than what and been more explored than what it was. I think in this.
I think the blue elephant's cool.
Bluey.
Bluey. I thought that was funny.
Mr.
Bluey. I couldn't remember. Yeah. I mean, I only saw it yesterday. I'm already forgetting it.
Which made me think of the kids show Bluey, which is an Australian TV show. I actually suspected. I thought it was going to be a stuffed Bluey. It's a little toy dog. I thought it was going to be the dog, and then when it turned out to be not the dog, it makes me wonder: are there like two versions of this film? Did they film another version with actual
just
Bluey?
For Australia, yeah,
just for Australia,
just for Australian release.
Yeah. It's been done.
Such an Australian thing that, like, I mean, it's big over here as well. Or they didn't have the rights to it. They were going to try to get the rights and then couldn't get them in the end.
That's always a possibility, isn't it? Always.
I thought that was funny when he opens up the cupboard and there's hundreds of the little bastards. I thought that was great. I thought that was genuinely funny. But I mean, yes, I'm not exactly grasping at straws. Also, can we just say when he does, kill the leading lady at the end, and we're all basically happy about it. We don't actually see that. So Black is being
same thing,
but I don't mean in the sense of did he really do it? There's no, she's dead, all right. But I think it's just considering that the film has always shown us all the other deaths. I thought he was being considerate and nice, and actually, it's the kind of Black in his odd way is kind of an old-fashioned kind of guy, and actually he knew that we wanted her to be dead because she just did the wrong thing and she deserved it because she killed far too many nice people. But we didn't actually want to literally see it happen. We just wanted to know it happened, and I thought that was, because you say he blows her head off. Well, you're assuming that, Luke. We don't know what he did to her. He was just involved a bang.
I suppose, I guess when I think about other Black movies, he had no qualms about killing Amelia in The Nice Guys, and that was a shocking death. And there are other shocking deaths in his other films. I do wonder if it's a fake out that the studio will, if they ever try to do a sequel, will want to bring her back. Now, I would say as the film, as it plays out, I say it plays like she's dead. But we all know movie magic, and if you don't see the body, is she really dead? So, I don't know. Is it Black being a gentleman, or is it studio saying, don't show a body, because if this is a hit, we're going to bring her back?
Play dirtier.
Yes. Play even more dirty. Yes.
Yeah. I don't know. I mean, you could convince me one way or the other, like on alternate days. But I do think it's odd that we don't see her die. I've sort of fall in Luke's camp a bit more than Black's a gentleman. I'm sure he is.
Well, I think he tends to be. It's like that scene in The Good Guys when he, pulls the dress over her. Things like that.
Yes.
And it sounds daft, but no. She is, as far as I'm concerned, 100% dead as a doornail.
Yeah.
Because I think otherwise, it would really. I think it's one of the things that I'm wondering if it'll make a difference to audiences. That's what I'm curious about, because in a way, we're almost the wrong audience. That's kind of the problem we are having.
Yeah, well, that's a very good point. We are the wrong. I think we are the wrong audience. If they know what audience they want, I don't think we're it. And the people that I think it may be designed for probably do, would say, well, she's not going to be dead, is she? Because there'll be another one, and the only thing that'll stop that is figures, I suppose, but it'll be I'd find it really cheap if it's a cop out, if it's a put up job. I'd find that a real cheap knock, personally.
Yeah.
Also, in fairness, you don't just hear the gunshot; you hear
the thud,
thudding. So I think I think they're being discreet. But I mean, like I say, people do stupid things all the time. I'd like to think that Shane Black wouldn't be the one making that movie if they decided to. It'd be great if this was a hit and it emboldened them to be a little better. That would be nice.
That would be, but
doesn't usually work that way, does it? But
no.
I mean, just
more of the same.
I was gonna just the ending alone. I'm like, I don't know if I'd want to watch another. The ending, as in not the death scene ending, but the second ending that has to force you to feel a happy moment, where him and Parker and Grofield are walking around Times Square. Why is it New Year's Eve, New Year's Day? I don't know. It just is. It's a thing that's happening. Okay. And I found it so bizarre and so jarring when they walk past the sign that has the picture of the lady on it, and it's flapping, and the thing flaps and the poster falls away, and it says the end. And then Grofield steps back in for a fourth wall break.
Yeah.
And says, "The end, motherfuckers." And it almost played like that was an outtake. That
this is what I mean by the humor seeming forced.
Yeah, because this isn't like Kiss Kiss Bang Bang, where like we're sorry to all the people in the Midwest for saying fuck so much.
Yeah,
which is just a great moment.
Yeah, well, that's a perfect moment. This is just like, what are you doing?
Yeah, and it's almost as if this wants to hark back to that, but hasn't got the energy or the imagination to do it properly. Which is a real shame.
It's this push-pull, isn't it? It won't commit to being that hard-boiled film, which I think most people wouldn't really want to watch. But it doesn't entirely want to commit to just being a regular comedy thriller, because actually that was not the intention, and it's not where it came from. And they're just stuck. And it's a shame. I hope he does another one, and I hope he does it with a better actor in a better way, and maybe for less money. And but then again, how much more of his years can he spend just getting something like this made? That can't be easy. If it's a big hit, great news for Shane Black, but at the same time, we're talking about, I'm obsessed with My Age at the moment, just because birthday at the weekend. But he's getting on a bit. He's in his mid-60s now. There are not a lot of directors in their mid-60s who are not Ridley Scott or Clint Eastwood, who are currently employed. And he must be aware of that kind of ageism in Hollywood is absolutely rampant. So and if he's going to make films that are for too narrow an audience, the kind of film that we would love,
Nice Guys,
which is great.
Box office flop, that was The Nice Guys, and Kiss
was
Kiss
not
Bang
a big
Bang.
hit, was it?
No.
Just do Nice Guys too, like everyone's been asking for 30 years or whatever it is.
The TV version. I'll watch the TV show version.
Or the TV version,
every week. Another case like the Rockford Files. Yes.
Well, they solve one case a week in an hour. I'm okay. I'm okay with that.
Come on.
Yeah.
I'm okay with that.
No overarching arc, at all.
I agree.
They remain jerks for the entire season. They learn nothing.
They don't progress. They don't advance. They just solve the case.
You push the reset button at the beginning of every episode.
Yes, I'm down with that. It's funny because you mentioned Ridley Scott, and he's currently big in the news right now because he's quoted as saying Hollywood is drowning in mediocrity. The full quote is, "The quantity of movies that are made today, literally globally, millions, not thousands, millions, and most of it is shit." He goes, and so what do? It's a horrible thing, but I've started watching my own movies, and actually they're pretty good. Also, they don't age. And frankly, he's pretty much right.
I wouldn't agree with that at all. I think at least 50% of everything he's made is complete crap.
Yeah.
I'm not a fan. But that sounds a lot like him because he is unbelievably arrogant. And
he is, but I think there's an element of truth. Even remove the arrogance, remove him saying the line about him watching his own movies.
Yeah.
I think there is an element of truth to that. And that is when you think of all the fucking Marvel movies that come out, all the DC movies that come out, all the Fast and the Furious movies, all these things that come out, and it's just like I was at a conference this weekend, a writing conference, and we were talking about like the last like 10 years, what is the pop culture identity of the last 10 years in film and TV? What are the things that are signifiers of that was this period? Like you can go back to the early 2000s and you have your, I don't know, your Pirates of the Caribbeans, you have your Casino Royales, you have your X-Men, you have things that are they point to a specific decade. And then somewhere around 2010, that ability just has faded away, and there's been less of sort of an identity of, this decade was this thing, this was a pop culture thing of this decade, this was that, and I feel part of that is just everything has become so vanilla. Everything has become so vanilla. I'll poke on Marvel just a little bit more. Like Marvel, for example, there is nothing romantic about Marvel, as in there's no romance with its characters. There's no romance, there's no love, there's no fucking sex. And you're like, why not? It's in the X-Men movies, it's in Spider-Man movies. Like people want romance in their stuff. Like everything is just so vanilla.
Yeah, that is a problem. That is a problem. I've recently been rewatching like series like Prime Suspect and Cracker, which are from like the mid 90s, or whatever they are, mid to late 90s. And when you compare them to crime dramas that are written now, they are so much more engaging and challenging and gritty and shocking, because everything now is bland, and another point that always sort of comes out of discussions like this that I have with people is that there's no characters now that people at the age when I was when Indiana Jones arrived or when Han Solo arrived, that you can say that was mine. Kids of that age, they've still got Han Solo and Indiana Jones, but as old men. There's nothing new being done to create icons and heroes for the generation that's coming through, and I think that's a real shame, and that's just lazy. I think it's just lazy and an unwillingness to take a chance and to take a risk.
Yeah, and I suppose to bring it back to Parker real quick, it's a shame because if the ducks are in a row, this could have been a really good revival of the character that maybe could have worked, as opposed to all of the other versions that sort of fell flat mostly. This could you could have done something with this. This could have been a thing.
Yeah.
Will it be? I don't think so. I don't think so.
I go back to Payback as a kind of salutary lesson. The way that it exists in two versions. The theatrical version was a big hit. You watch the director's cut, and I think it's a much better film. But you can see exactly why. And I think, therefore, they have to work harder to square the circle, to turn, because, I mean, for instance, I didn't think David Fincher's The Killer was any good either. I may be the wrong person now. And I was thinking, who would I have preferred to Wahlberg? I think, well, would Fassbinder have been any good? Well, actually, no, because I find him too chilly. I think the way he would have played it would have been plausible, but he wouldn't have brought the charisma. He would have deliberately kind of not played it that way. I think, given the kind of actor he is, and so you're kind of thinking, okay, so maybe Jake Gyllenhaal or whoever. You try to come up with an actor in their mid-40s. I mean, the character's supposed to be about 38. And
Ryan
you
Gosling.
sort of, maybe. But in actual fact, he's not the right one either. And I say because the thing about Drive is he's just blank. And I think the difficulty you've got is that
Blade Runner 2049. Pretty good in that.
I'm not a big fan, and this is where I'm not necessarily going to agree with you about some things, because I think that
You will agree.
I think things like Hunger Games, if you're looking at things that made a difference and that matter to young viewers, it's Hunger Games and Harry Potter. It's not Indiana Jones and James Bond.
Harry Potter went out of fashion in 2011 when the films ended, but that's that's right at that point. That's
it's coming back,
2010.
And no. I mean, I think that there is a clear point at when X number of things happen. One of them is streamers, and the other one is COVID, and it just screws things up. But I would say though that with Marvel, I think when they got up to the more or less 20 movies and they did their Avengers 2-parter, I think that's never going to happen again. I think that was amazing. I don't think every film was amazing, but a lot of them were actually very good. I enjoyed them. And I say that as someone who isn't necessarily big. I used to read them as a kid. And so in my mind, they live in that part of my life when I was 11, 12. But I've not gone back to reread them. I haven't kept up with them. I enjoyed a lot of them. I thought the Russo brothers did a great job with the Avengers finales. I thought they were great in their own way. I thought and I like Shane Black's Iron Man 3.
I do too, actually.
Great film.
I do.
And I think in a way, what we should do is, go back and watch Iron Man 3 and make ourselves way happier. Even if it's just for the end credits, man.
I like this idea. Or the Nice Guys, or Kiss Kiss Bang Bang.
Guys, you guys can come around and watch my amazing Bluray. It's I haven't unwrapped it yet.
Yes, I've got the box set, but I don't think I've opened it either. I need to crack that guy open. Yeah, no, yeah. Well, okay. Well, I think we have beaten Payback to a bloody pulp.
Payback?
Not Payback.
Great.
Sorry, Play Dirty. Jesus. Jeez. That whatever film we're talking about now. I guess we should rate it. As listeners know, we rate all of our films out of 5 Falcons, 1 being the worst, 5 being the best. What do we rate Payback? I did it again. Not Payback. What do we rate Play Dirty?
You give Payback 4 Falcons.
That's so my fault. I'm so sorry, Luke.
It's all right. Play Dirty. What do we rate?
My psychological warfare has finally paid off.
It is working. Playback. Damn it. Play Dirty. Jesus. Take the wheel.
You want to redo the whole thing?
No, I'm going to leave it in. I'm going to leave it in for the listeners just to make fun of me. It's all good. Play Dirty. What do we rate it? Starting with you, Sergio. 1 out of 5.
Okay. I guess I'm going to give it a 2. It's better than 1. It's not as good as 3. It's a 2. So it's just 2 little falcons. Sorry, Shane. We love you, but this one not so much.
Yeah, I echo that. Shane, we do love you, but this is a misstep for me. It's 2 falcons for me as well. It was from the minute we started recording. It was never going to change.
No, I agree. Two Falcons, and I will echo what you guys have said, and that is we do love Shane Black. We are a big fan of his movies, his work, his writing, his directing. This one didn't work. I'm not sure the blame is on him. There could be many other reasons as to why this didn't work, because we know that he makes good stuff, and we know that he's a good writer, and we know that he's a good storyteller. So when things like this happen, I'm sort of more in the camp of all right, what did the studio do to screw this up when you have someone as competent as Shane Black? We've thoroughly investigated Play Dirty. For once I said it right. We can close this one out, put it in the drawer. We're done. We will be back next week with another investigation. So remember, in the meantime, to take care walking down those mean streets.